works now. Why didn't it work the last 5 times? What's up, man? What? Anyways, um, we're live. Wow, surprising. So it works. It crashed like 3 times in a row, four I think, before it finally allows me to go live. I had to restart OBS for some reason, I don't know. I guess it can happen, as always, nothing else to really say. But the main point is, here we are. Very good. Also, are the captions? They are disabled. Uh, they are going to probably lag my whole PC, no? I don't know if I really want that today at the least. I don't care. Not today, particularly not on this one day. In particular, I wish to not care. I would prefer to not have them at all. Anyways, here we are. After so long, here we are. I guess I was watching the PC and I was standing here thinking about today in particular, thinking about going live and whatnot, and it seems quite interesting that I don't know, probably for like 10 minutes still talking out loud without even going live. So yeah, I guess truly it was finally time. Uh, no, not that much to really say, but yeah, here we are. Finally, after so long, here we are. What a happy thing to find out that you get to enjoy once again something that you supposedly always liked. So yeah, here here we are. I don't think there is that much more needed. That's enough for today at the very least. I would even call it the win. The victory is to simply be here, nothing else. Every other thing is kind of outside of the question today. Or yeah, this time. I don't know. That's the funny thing. There is so little consistency that truly just being here constitutes some kind of victory. It's it's beautiful to see. I don't know. I don't. It's beautiful to see that something so mundane, like simply hitting the go live button, will be now an achievement. Even is that like, yeah, I. It makes me think of the how down do you need to be to find it such a simple action rewarding enough or worthy enough of praise? Like, is it truly this? This is the point that we have reached. This is it. This thing is victory. Simply trying to do something is winning at this point. There is such a lack of everything else that now this is a win. In whose book is this any kind of achievement? It simply was to go live. But it seems to be that to a certain extent, yeah, wow, this is amazing. I guess. Anyways, the point is, here we are. We have some stuff to continue dealing with. I was not exactly when I finished. When I finished, I think I was kind of between tired and also as always, or as most days, because today is the biggest exception in a long while, as most days I was trying to finish the last stream because I have stuff to do at around that same time, almost always. And that means that no matter how much I have left to talk about or whatever, I still have a necessity to end. So we didn't get to finish to think about the topic at hand. We didn't get to, yeah, to terminate the idea itself. And because of that, there are some other additional things about it that I might as well try to add on today. I guess we will see how it goes. We will simply observe how it goes, and that will happen later on. I don't even want right now to do it. Later on, um, we will have time for that. Right now, simply wanted to see first and foremost if I can stay awake. That's everything that I want to see. If I can stay up for like half an hour, then yeah, we're going to do it. If not, I am going to pass out on my bed once again because stuff. Anyways, but yeah, I don't know. It's kind of crazy. It's I think so. It's very crazy after all. It's like your efforts are one of the weirdest things to always measure, no? Because doing something in life is always not about simply what you wish and what not. It also is about finding a proper balance between those things that you say you want and those things that you know you can do. And in some cases, it seems like it shouldn't be that hard to truly commit to one thing, yet we find ourselves struggling so much in that regard. It's like it stops being simply surprising. It becomes rather, I guess, at least from my experience, annoying. It ties back to what I was trying to say. Truly, there is so little of anything at all that simply trying something, simply doing the minimal, can be conceived as an achievement. I get the idea of, wow, you need to properly find the happiness in your actions and whatnot, in the sense of sometimes, even more if you have a plan, you might as well need and properly pay attention to what you do. Not because it will make the whole plan that you have happen, but rather because the way in which your mental attitude towards what you are doing can be modified by simply finding it somewhat entertaining. Let's say, in a particular example, as always, if you are doing physical exercise, it is always better to do as much as you can without even thinking about how much, when you're just starting, without even thinking about 20 years from now, it is kind of meaningless. Most people don't even have the possibility of doing something like that. It's kind of insincere to say that you should be aiming towards such a distant future, but at the same time, truly do you want to measure yourself against such a tiny thing like, wow, here we are. I hit go live. That's such an achievement. Wow, amazing. That's the most notable thing to truly. Is that the reaction? What's the proper way to say to find it good? It always feels to a certain degree like something ironic, and I don't even know, man. It's it's a tiresome process overall. This thing of being alive, that's what I'm talking about. Nothing else. This thing of being alive, that's what's incredibly tiresome. And that's what also incredibly annoying. But I guess sometimes it just takes patience. And I guess anybody's patience can run out, so yeah. It can happen. Also, Sana, pay attention to your stream. If you're streaming, pay attention to your stream. But welcome. But yeah, I don't know, man. It's so. I don't want to say it's hard or it is complicated. I think at some point we kind of talk about it here. There was this discussion of, wow, are things truly complex? Are things truly hard or impossible? And it feels like whenever you see something of that nature, you're kind of just giving up. Whenever you say, wow, it is so complicated to do this one thing that I want to do, you're kind of just, I don't think even searching, simply saying something like that is already a big enough excuse. And I don't know, I don't enjoy it. I certainly can't enjoy it. It's it's very tiring, I guess, that the normal state of existence is simply using as many excuses as you can and trying your best to a certain degree, avoid any kind of enjoyable thing. Why? Nobody knows truly exactly why. But it happens, and when it happens, there is not that much that anybody can truly do because somehow even such a tiny problem gets called the most impossible thing to deal with, And I don't know. I truly. I guess if there has been a point in which throughout this whole time so far, which I didn't know, today is the day in which I certainly, for real, don't know anything at all. But anyways, well, good evening, welcome, Crispin. I hope you're doing well. I hope you are fine. Thank you for being here. Basically, that I guess it's just a process of accepting stuff and letting go of some other. This thing of being alive, I guess that's the crazy thing that no matter what, truly, there is not even a way in which you can avoid existing. That's the beautiful thing, I guess. But I at the same time, I don't know. That's still part of the funny thing that despite having been here for so long, and when I refer particularly in this, when I refer to being here, I refer to simply talking about what happens inside of a stream. Outside of life, that's a different thing, I guess. But inside of here, one of the very few things that I always thought was going to be interesting to try and talk about to certain degrees, this beautiful question of what's even a way in which you can exist. Not what's the meaning. To a certain degree, you discover that there is no inherent meaning which anybody can aim towards, and which is kind of meaningless to try and share with others to a certain extent. After all, what would I say to you that this one thing is should be meaningful enough for you? What's the point of me showing you what I want if you are also somebody completely independent who might as well not even find it interesting to think about a similar thing, to spend their time trying to discuss anything of that nature? What's the point in doing something like that? What is it that I truly gain when I try to force into somebody else what's an inner vision of something so abstract like being alive? Wow. So the only thing that can be in place of that, I guess, Dawn, is to say, well, at the very least, there are this handful of other things that anybody can try to do that help with the act of existing, that provide some assistance even to those who are completely committed to any one objective. And that's the point of being here. That's what tries to happen here. That's what tries to be created in any meaningful way. And that's at the same time what I was trying to say before explaining all of this. That's what I can't ever know. What kind of explanation given by me is truly understandable? What kind of message can truly be taken as something interesting, even if who says it is so inconsistent with what I do? Or how can you even expect to take anything seriously if you are mentally in a place in which the minimal effort of trying to pay attention to somebody else already seems hard enough? It's incredibly complex, and it isn't in any kind of funny way something that you can simply say, wow, it might happen, it might be. Certainly a hard thing to try and have this type of discussions. It isn't as simple like that to a certain extent. It is even derogatory to anybody else to simply discard the problem in such a manner. It isn't what matters to say, wow, yeah, it's hard. We all know it's hard. It isn't anything new to say that it's hard. It's the most obvious thing of life that it's hard to have any minimal type of discussion of this sort. It's when you talk with people, you realize how complex it is, how incredibly uncomfortable it is to try and have this sort of discussion. Everybody knows that, and it doesn't mean anything at this point to simply base yourself on such a thing and say, oh yeah, it can be quite hard to have this type of of talks. It can be quite complex. it doesn't mean anything. It doesn't solve the problem itself. I don't care if it is hard, even. That isn't the point. I. I don't know, man. It's simply being tired of finding that. I guess no matter sometimes how much you try to say anything, it might as well in no meaningful way work out. But the problem once again is what's exactly the reason as to why it doesn't work out? Is it because it lacks repetition? Are we truly that incapable of paying attention to what we hear from other people that we need to hear it 20 times in a row? Does it truly mean anything to have the necessity of repeating the same things over and over again? It's. I remember even talking about something of that sort with a friend. He told me something along the lines of, at the very least, you're not giving up on that thing which you want itself, at the very least. And to a certain extent, yeah, you're not giving up, wow. But it's being complacent with things also part of the problem. It's thinking that sometimes just because you are trying, that's enough. Wow. Just because example, once again example, just because I went live, everything else is fine. No, it doesn't work like that. I am incredibly sorry, I guess, but it doesn't work in that way. You don't gain every single thing that you wish simply for having tried. Proper, proper desires and objectives take thousands of connected efforts, at the very least, if not millions of efforts of different things that you might as well use and do in order to obtain that one thing which you say that you believe could be useful or which you wish for. I mean, out of nowhere, the main message is, yeah, you know what? It's it's fine to not care. It's fine, I guess, to not even aim towards anything. Or it's fine to back to what I was saying before. It's fine to say that simply having tried is enough. How can that be called sufficient? How can you? Which world do you live in that out of nowhere, simply having given it a shot is enough? Simply having started is enough. I like the idea of, wow, yeah, we're being quite positive and we're simply trying to assist anybody who is aiming towards any one thing. I get it. I like it. It doesn't suffice any pursuit of any kind. It doesn't make the rest work just because there was one initial rock, let's say. It doesn't work that way. But I don't know, man. The problem is always, I guess, something else. That's the funny thing also, that the problem is always something else. The problem is never the actions of oneself. Why will it be reasonable to expect that you should take as much accountability as you can about every single thing that happens to you. What's the point in doing something like that, no? What do you truly gain in accepting that you might as well be doing, particularly yourself, something in an incorrect manner? Why would you take such a problematic stance towards this thing of being alive? After all, aren't you even antagonizing yourself when you do something like that? And because such things keep getting repeated over and over and over again, just because that we never change and we never truly find the properly those things which can even solve the situations in which we find ourselves to be in, I guess. And it isn't simply about wow, and it will be so easy with that. It never is easy. It never is simple enough. It never is in any kind of way something so simple. But the point is, what are you going to do? On the other hand, are you going to believe that by staying the same things are going to get better out of nowhere? That by not trying anything anymore, life becomes good? That existence gets solved once you have simply obtained self-sufficiency in the most basic of the levels? I always think about it when people tries to talk out these kind of discussions, that the human is this and that. The human lives in a world of ideas. Do you even consider that? Are you even aware of how much of a world you're living in terms of every single thing that surrounds you is an idea? There is no other thing in this world that you truly care about. This is the most abstract level possible of existence. You're not even moved by the necessity of survival of tomorrow like the average animal. You're projecting yourself towards things that will happen decades into the future. You're basing yourself around things that are also completely outside of your control. You create necessities upon yourself. You say now that you needed to have a phone, an internet connection, and that you needed to watch whatever kind of thing because it is somehow logical for you to say it and for everyone else, the human species, to say, oh wow, yeah, this person is right. And you would say that we live in a world of ideas, that out of nowhere things, discussions of this sort make sense. You won't say that it happens like that. You won't even conceive such a minimal beginning point of anything. And you're going to keep getting angry at the very few tiny things which are real by themselves. It doesn't mean that the ideas are not real to a certain extent. It's still a discussion about an idea itself. What is happening in a moment like this one? It's always ideas. The human doesn't know how to live without any idea at all. It's I don't even know where. I don't feel like trying to even remember exactly from where, but somebody in one of the many things that I have had to read at this point said something along the lines of the human doesn't know other thing besides its own experience, not because it can't, You're an animal, you can still try to revert your ways of acting to a more primal one, and you could experience then how it works. But it happens that by simply thinking, you find out that it is quite satisfactory, I guess. When education is solely based on information transfer to make good little laborers, long term thinking is not as encouraged as it should be. I guess it is kind of true, yeah. To a certain extent, it is true. It, or let's say it like this, it can be even said that it is completely true. But the point isn't, instead of that, that it it is negated, that you can't in any kind of way try to think for yourself, by yourself, about the things that you enjoy. I I don't think, at the least so far, there are that many limits and there are that many agents which actively limit how much can you think about things. And on the other hand, yeah, it happens that we live in a world also in which everything is graded and every kind of thing is measured, and there are so many other people which, if you say something, want to exactly see where are you coming from, what are you trying to argue about, yeah. But the point is, even with all of that, it isn't something that you can't do. The problem of, I guess, particularly on that sense, is thinking ended up being almost transformed into the devil of the present, or of the modern man, as if somehow thinking was going to kill you. It's accessible. It's the mere act of sometimes having a conversation with somebody else is actively thinking together with another human being. Thinking doesn't need to be such a complicated process. It's most people, if not almost nobody, will ever experience having deep ideas, not because it is something impossible for them, but rather because nobody develops themselves to such a point. And even if it isn't encouraged, even if it isn't something that everybody mentions, it is still, to a certain minimal degree, one of the points which everybody gets, that the moment in which you lose your capacity to think by and for yourself, you are losing a piece of your life, and you're losing a piece of what you say that you enjoy doing. The moment in which you renounce that possibility of trying to find why is it that you enjoy the things you do, why is it that somehow now you are having a good time being in one place instead of another, talking with somebody instead of doing a certain chore that you have to do. It's always something that you can do. It doesn't mean that because it isn't encouraged out of nowhere now, you can't in any way try to. I get, to a certain extent, I get that it isn't the point of the message. It isn't the point to say and to accuse anybody of, wow, we are so limited. It doesn't happen like that. I get it. It isn't exactly what you were saying. That, but it still is. I, I don't know. I find it, to a certain extent, let's say it like this. Isn't it tiresome to out of nowhere be making up as many excuses for everything else. It's like the process of thinking. That's I guess another problem. The process of thinking, of having the capacity to rationalize anything at all, ends up leading to a yeah a worrying tendency by which you say an incredibly necessary amount of things to be okay, and in which you categorize a thousand different unhealthy annoyances that exist around your present life as something that out of nowhere is fine to have. It's I I keep hearing this one thing of the modern human is the most medicated species on the earth, and to a certain extent, I guess the biggest problem isn't that really the amount of substances or vices that exist, is rather how many times are you going to justify not even trying something out? It's once again, it sounds. I don't like when somebody says to me, "Wow, you are actively not thinking enough. You could do it." I don't even have the tools to know if what I am thinking about is the proper thing or not. But it is still kind of necessary to say, how many times are you going to give up what is your minimal degree of authority over what is something so internal about yourself? Even if even if the whole system itself, because it isn't simply the educational one, it is the modern society which out of nowhere finds it weird to have any kind of hard conversation. Do you know how horrible it is to be out there to try and bring up any topic of minimal true deepness and find out that out of nowhere people don't want to talk about it, and not even because it is hard, because it is weird. I don't fucking care about what is weird. But yeah, I guess something along those lines, man. That's those things. So that kind of stuff is what's so annoying, man. I mean, I guess the real problem is not that it's annoying. Simply, it dies there. Wow, it's annoying. End of the point. The real problem is you go out and you talk with other people, and you find out that even them find it to be something incredibly hurtful. That you when you can finally, to a minimal degree, instigate that desire to talk about whatever in anybody, that's when you find out that out of nowhere there are so many interesting things to talk about. There are so many wonderful ideas inside of everybody, and you're going to say that it's okay to give up on something like that. It makes sense out of nowhere. Do not even give it an opportunity. Do not even try to observe how what can be said by somebody might have any meaning. It's like I get the idea that it's tiresome. Everything it's tiresome. Every single action, but leads unavoidably to being tired. Even doing nothing is tiresome. I One of the most surprising things is if you find somebody with a depression which has been crippled out of their normal habits, you will find out that those are normally the people who have the huge, the biggest problems when it comes to being tired. Every single thing is tiresome. No matter what you do, it will be annoying. Why not even try to do something nice for? I don't even know if it is for yourself, for others, for whatever thing that you want to justify. I I don't get the point of being so easily discouraged by whatever. It's like there is always this interesting concept of, you know, everybody had that internal child inside of themselves. I, I don't know, man. I don't think it. It sounds great, I guess, but at the same time, I don't want to give up on the rest. You know, I what's the once again? What's the point if I give up on the rest? At the very least, to a minimal extent, even if it is the whole measurement of life, the reality of wow, this might as well not truly change anything. This exact moment might not change anything. Even if that happens, it might not be the biggest change in the whole world. Okay, but even with that, it doesn't mean that the continuous efforts, experience throughout time in this whole pursuit of one objective will achieve that finally after, I don't know, years, decades, there might be a brighter future. I don't know. I don't think it's justified to say that, oh wow, I have such interesting ideas. It's so sad to see that the average people doesn't have them. I might as well remove myself from society. That's one of the main points of that's that's one of the most important. I also say hi to my dogs. They were silent for how long? 44 minutes. It's finally time for them to enter the picture. Wow. Anyways, I don't really care. I am sorry. Not today. I was saying. Well, also, welcome, son. I hope you're well. But I was trying to say, you know, that's one of the main things of being being in the world and having the capacity to think. I don't like the premise of philosophy. Wow, the whole field of philosophy. No, it isn't only applied to philosophy. The moment in which you can think out something useful and the moment in which you are capable of expressing it, you should see it as an obligation to talk about such a thing and to be capable of expressing what you seem to find interesting in order to try and motivate other people to, in any minimal way, find themselves to be doing better. It doesn't matter how good you are doing by yourself. The world doesn't revolve around one single individual. It never is worth it to do it like that. And it never is useful to be so self centered. What matters is being capable of sharing those infinite discoveries that will happen throughout humanity and be capable of expressing them to whoever, because that's the most beautiful thing of language itself, that you are given the opportunity of talking with people of any kind and trying to see if you will have the possibility of expressing that one particular idea in order to help them as much as you find it useful in your own existence. That's what matters. I don't think, sadly, it's truly meaningful to say, yeah, you know what? Most people are so damn. It's time for me to leave society. No, doing something like that is a failure to everybody. And I guess, inversely, sadly, it's also a failure of the system itself on your side, because it somehow was seen as something acceptable for you to give up on the rest of the world. It doesn't work like that. It never functions like that. And it never brings any kind of satisfaction to be that way. You know? I guess still, because I feel like I am too much attacking the idea. It does certainly help a lot to find people who can minimally share ideas, like who can be minimally on the same level of, yeah, on the same level of what you are thinking about, standing in terms of thinking capacities and development of knowledge, or whatever is it that you have. And with that, you win the possibility of having an even better and brighter future in terms of affecting any one thing that you wish to positively. But to simply say that other people might be quite dumb, let's say, doesn't really help in any one way, in any way. That's I guess the biggest problem, that out of nowhere you hear so many times people say, yeah, it's a valid reason to give up on somebody else just because they seem to not get what is being discussed about. I think the lack of proper meditation, I guess, observation of what was the previous history of the world, shows you that, sadly, whenever something like that gets said, you're ignoring how much we have, to a certain degree, I guess, evolved. There isn't anything more beautiful than to be aware of how many things have happened in the past for you to be in this very moment. And you feel entitled to say that it's okay to, out of nowhere, abandon somebody else? Where does something like that come from, even? What do you gain when you say that it's fine to not give an opportunity to others? What What kind of system enables such a selfish way of thinking? And the best of the things is you have 1,000 different lies to justify something like that. Oh wow, yeah, it is this capitalist system. It is this Western mentality. It's never your responsibility. It's never your fault. It's everybody else's fault. It's at some point it doesn't happen that it gets tiresome to blame everything else but oneself. What's the point of being so much of an enemy to every single thing that exists? It's like you out there and you hear people who say, yeah, it's hard to find anybody who thinks similarly to me. And I hate trying to discuss things with people of lower minds. I get it. It doesn't mean that you should give up. It is incredibly tiresome, but it is still rewarding. The moment in which you can see somebody start to comprehend even a bit of what you are talking about, even a minimal degree of what you are trying to convey with words, with action, with whatever, you find a degree of satisfaction because you know, as long as you're talking about something minimally useful, that you're affecting everything else in a meaningful manner. It doesn't bring satisfaction to say, yeah, and because it is tiresome, I will stop doing it. I don't know, man. It's so. I guess it's always that hard. But yeah, I don't. I don't know. At the very least, it's always the possibility of being here, what we have, and what we can enjoy to any degree. Just with that, it's already enough. Sometimes, just with that, it's truly enough. Not because, continuing with what I said earlier, not because, wow, you went live, you accomplished so much by going live. No, not because of that, but rather because compared to being such a horrible, toxic human being, that is already enough. That is already more than enough. Trying to do even a bit something against what's such a toxic way of seeing existence is already enough. Because if it is truly motivated by your understanding about such a negative thing, it means that you are doing it because you find it useful. And when you do something that you believe will contribute towards any, once again, useful change, it never matters how tiresome it is. It is rewarding enough. That's why, once again, being here to a certain extent can be described as something that is, in that sense, more than enough. But I don't know, man. It's still such a hard thing, I guess. There are, I guess that's on the other hand, that's the different side of the problem. That there are so many things in which people can change and try to do better, that properly trying to motivate all of those things might as well not simply take one lifetime. It's impossible to change so many things in anybody's life, even in oneself. Nobody will ever accomplish such a complete change. it is to in a higher degree of observation. Even the unconscious desires affect the way in which you act. Even if you are not capable of realizing that you are doing something wrong, you will unavoidably at some point or another do something that can be classified as bad. Unavoidably. That's part of the human nature itself. Nobody can obtain such a degree of perfection or anything like that. And there are so many things inside of that very realm which can, in one way or another, affect the people and make your life better. That simply trying to work towards all of those things, once again, not isn't only tiresome, is time consuming. That's the problem. We might as well never see an end, a finish line appear, let's say, at the horizon when it comes to trying to act with a more useful existence. If it were to happen that you could classify it as such, it can't be experienced or observed that simply because you started to work to today, tomorrow, 5 years ago or 5 years in the future, you will get to find an end line, a point in which there is no other change to make. Perfection doesn't exist in the life of humans. And I guess to a certain extent also it is quite funny to accept that unavoidably sometimes you might even get affected by what other people does, by what other people says and whatnot. Being an animal that lives in societies is quite a funny thing, but the point truly isn't about this problem, is that there can be a future in which we can believe, I don't know, I guess 50,000 years into the future. I guess it isn't that unrealistic when it is so far away to say that we might as well start to solve all of those problems. And we can believe that 50,000 years into the future, the change that could happen inside of everybody's life would have happened in order for everyone to find themselves having that kind of quote unquote perfect life. It isn't perfect because it has no problems. The problems are inherent to existence. The moment in which you. One of the funniest things that happen when you learn about how the universe works is there is a non-zero chance of any kind of atom that exists of disappearing out of nowhere. There is a non-zero chance in which somehow things might explode. It's like you want to talk about something absurd. There is a possibility that we are not aware of even, in which tomorrow the world might literally explode. It's incredibly funny when you think about it like that. There is nothing certain about this universe, no matter how much of a constant it has had in the past. It can somehow vary in such a way that the tomorrow could be as uncertain as no other thing. But it doesn't mean that there is no point in projecting towards the future. I mean, that's still going back to it. We have already to a certain degree talked about humans. Humans have ideas. Humans are animals who live in the plane of ideas. Something quite funny is, even if you discard the future, it doesn't mean that it doesn't exist inside of your own plane of ideas, inside of your own field of concepts. It will still be there. Maybe as only something that brings pain to you, but it doesn't mean that it won't be present. It's impossible. It's like, I don't know, that. It's impossible for you to get rid of some concepts, no matter how hard you try to, because they are ingrained to your knowledge, and just because of that, now you're bestowed the possibility of making something useful out of this particular knowledge, or discarding it and saying, yeah, you know what, I don't think there is any particular good thing to gain by seeing the tomorrow come or whatever. But you know, the point itself tried to be routing back to what I was trying to talk about. It is impossible to get rid of something like the future. Therefore, it is quite meaningless to say, yeah, you know what? From here on forward, it might happen that we get rid of all of our problems. After a certain point, it might happen that we can finally say that we have done it, that we have solved something. That's fine. That's amazing. And that's certainly one of the most beautiful things. And I guess certainly I can say it at the very least inside of that context. And I hate when the idea of, oh yeah, it's so distant. Why would I personally need to take any kind of action? Because it might as well not happen. I don't. Everybody seems to have the capacity of thinking. Once again, yet somehow it's not inside of your own capacity of cognition to realize that the possibilities that you have might as well not exist in anybody else's life. That you can say something with such a uniqueness that it can change the whole course of existence itself. You don't think it can happen? How do you think that other people have that possibility, but not you? How is it that you warp the visions of this world that you have to such a degree that out of nowhere everybody is important but you? Everybody means something and has a purpose or has a usefulness but you. It doesn't work that way. Either everybody matters or nobody does. It isn't. That's once again, that's the point of so many teachings. Nobody is lesser than others. You don't gain anything by saying that, you know what, I give up. Nobody wins even when you give up. That's the most horrifying thing to realize. You don't even know if the people who decide to abandon their efforts incredibly early are not taking with them such a beautiful future just because we decided to say, yeah, you know what, it's fine, you can give up. The world is horrible enough. You don't need to experience the horribleness of the world. No, it doesn't work like that. It doesn't mean anything to act like that, neither. The world is going to be horrible no matter what. At the very least, you can spend the little time that you will have doing something that feels good. And once again, it isn't about being somebody completely selfish and self-centered. The beautifulness of saying something like, yeah, you can do something purposeful is that on the other side, it's always the idea of, yeah, you know, you should dedicate your time to selfish things. You should be completely attracted by every single kind of problem, and you should only be centered on your own pleasure. No, I am not talking about that. And that side of the idea is certainly one of the most hurtful things to accept and to try to believe that are real or useful in any manner. But yeah, I don't know. I guess it's always a matter of not even knowing that ends up leading to people like me to be here, you know? That's the surprising thing. You open up the possibility of discovering anything, and instead of that anything, the everything itself is also contained, so you don't know what can happen in the future because it might as well be a surprisingly different one. What comes tomorrow, basically, and even if it is uncertain, as long as you have any one objective that means anything at all, you can ensure yourself that it is going to be a meaningful ride, let's say. And I don't know, I guess I do not like it. Not only when other people say that it doesn't happen like that, because certainly you realize with enough experience that it works that way. I am sorry, I guess, if you expected life to be more miserable or something along those lines. But sadly, existence is something quite beautiful and quite meaningful by nature. It doesn't matter how much you try to contradict it. I guess that's part of the human nature itself. There will be always the possibility for somebody to realize that the world is indeed a nice place and that things can indeed be better. That's the whole point, I guess, of being alive. That you have some desire of belief in the future. That's the easiest way to see or to understand if somebody wants to give up on being alive. If they say to you that there is nothing good, that there will never be something worth their time in this present era, you can be pretty sure that they are completely, completely sure if what they are going to do is the right thing or not. And they are already, instead of that, fully convinced that their decision of removing themselves from the picture means something, somehow. It doesn't need to be the reality, but somehow it seems to be that it works that way. And I don't know, I guess. That's the problem. I guess that so far in the present world, not only it happens, it's something normal to see, and it's something okay to experience, to watch. Out of nowhere, it's fine to see people give up. It's not anybody's business to say anything about anyone who wishes to abandon their efforts, who wishes to not dream anymore. It isn't your problem, my problem, it's only their problem. So why are we even going to take care of such a thing? Why would anybody spend their time on somebody else's life? What do you gain from doing something like that after all? That's always the degree of selfishness which exists on everybody that is annoying to see. And it doesn't mean I said it, everybody includes myself. It doesn't mean that it doesn't happen on me. Sometimes you simply, to a certain degree, let's say it like this, even on the daily life, you will find sometimes that people, even in the smallest of the things, decide to consider. Even arguments sometimes are purely one side saying something with enough intensity for the other one to shut up simply. It can happen like that. And simply because it happens like that, it doesn't mean that any of the sides which are arguing are right. It simply happens that you can tire out your opponent somehow, the one that you are discussing something with, and make them retire from the discussion simply because you decided to shout loud enough. Wow. And that happens, the point was, that happens even in the smallest of the things. You can even see people arguing about how did they wake up? What's the point in fighting so much? Not that it isn't meaningful to fight at all. There is nothing more useful than noticing when things are on one degree or another capable of affecting people in ways that help and with ideas that to some or other degree increase or at the very least start to enable possibilities of properly changing for the better whatever situation is it that currently happens. The point is why do it over the smallest and most meaningless of the things? What do you gain by doing something like that? It's like that the internal drive to always abandon and to always berate on whatever that supposedly innately exists inside of inside of everybody's life. But yeah, I don't know, man. That's the only thing that I can only say. That I don't know. What I know is I am going to take a tiny break. I need to do stuff. So give me like 1 second. And yeah, thank you for being here as always. Even if that always isn't even as remotely consistent as it used to be. Thank you. Anyways, what's up? Um, what a crazy thing, man. I perhaps, perhaps right now I might be completely. mm, I mean, yeah, I don't think it is tired the proper word. There should be a better classification for that, but yeah, basically something along the lines of it's quite crazy to be here. Let's say it like this. Let let's act like what I tried to say before didn't happen because I don't even know where I was trying to go with that. It's quite crazy to be here. It's one of the most surprising things. I guess to a certain degree, it's the most incomprehensible thing itself to have the possibility of being alive. I guess there is nothing as wonderful as that. I wish that that's one of the many things. We're only talking most of the time about concepts and whatnot. Instead of that very same thing, there is one tiny thing. Um, Also, let me add that because I am not even going to activate the subtitles. I don't want to. The surprising degree of beautifulness instead of life itself is I can only say sadly one of the hardest things to try and express in any meaningful way. It doesn't mean, once again, it doesn't mean that it is in any way okay to give up on others just because they don't get initially what you are trying to talk about. It doesn't matter if at the beginning, when discussing something with somebody who you care about, something that can also happen with any human being, you can develop care for anyone. There is no particular requisite for you to develop care, or there isn't any incapacity to do so against one particular individual out of nowhere that exists within anybody's mind. Sadly, the rationality that had permeated existence throughout time is still there when it comes to touching yourself, or at the very least having compassion towards other people or not. Therefore, you can't in any way develop hatred for somebody who has done nothing bad against you. You won't find out of nowhere somebody in the street and find yourself filled with so much rage that you might as well take their life or something like that. It doesn't happen that way. It has never happened in that way. If you are in a healthy state of mind, it will never happen. And what's the point with this? I was trying to say, and it can happen that once you find out, indeed, that life is beautiful, you can also try to explain it to other people. And that's where I went with that. There isn't any particular requisite for what you need to know, who you need to be to explain that. And the life itself, I guess, is the most, I wouldn't say compassionate. It's a horrible thing on the other hand, at the same time, to be alive. Life is literally the creator of pain. As long as you exist, you will sustain pain. That's kind of a main principle of existing. That as long as there is any thought, as long as you have the capacities that you do in the present, to understand things, to think for yourself, to be part of this world, there will be pain, unavoidably, no matter how hard you try to fight against that. And it is, instead of that, surprising then to see that it somehow can still be called a beautiful thing. I guess, I mean, that's what I said before, to a certain extent. That you can have discussions with other people and you can see what they find motivating enough, and the possibility of changing is always there. It's one of the most surprising things about existence. You never know if tomorrow you might find somebody who can express to you something with such a level of emotion, of happiness, that you might as well try to pursue that one new thing. Or if somebody shows you something so interesting that you might as well finally decide to commit to this one particular thing, you never know if that is going to happen or not. And that's it, by nature, I guess, one of the most surprising things. And one of the most beautiful things by itself, because you never know what might happen in the future. The uncertainties are not only negative, it's true. It's completely true that tomorrow you might as well not wake up. Okay, perfect. But what if the complete opposite were to happen? What if there could happen in the future that you experience being liberated from as many problems as you do have right now? That's the point of having any kind of hope. I don't get how people can say that it is okay to have no hope. It's like one of the most weird discussions to have with anybody of that sort, with somebody who is deeply depressed, I guess, who is cynic, is to hear them say something along the lines of, yeah, you know, there is nothing really meaningful into tomorrow. There is no point in having any kind of belief. Don't you realize that you're already having a belief that the tomorrow isn't going to be in any kind of way good by simply saying that? It's like everybody else is wrong except you, who somehow is trying to guess what the future might have in store for everyone. Not only for you, but for everyone. And you are somehow not wrong. By nature, you are not wrong. It's fine for you to be the only one who has the right outlook on that. It's incredibly crazy to realize that even saying, once again, that there is no point in existing is a belief of sorts. It's like one of the most gratifying discoveries, one of the most fulfilling things to see, is that everybody has their own biases and that everybody is moved by their own beliefs in one way or another, even if they don't have the capacity to call them beliefs. They are still there. It's an unavoidable quality of life that you will have things, that you will have desires, and that you will have something inside of you which orients you towards something else. There is no way in which you can avoid experiencing that. There is literally no way. And it only happens that you can try to negate such a reality, but you can't escape it by nature. And I don't think it is something bad to begin with. I don't think it is something negative or something harmful. That's not the point of what I'm trying to say. The point is, surprisingly enough, because you can experience the world, you have the possibility of also changing how you experience it. As long as you're capable of becoming aware of how much of a change it can happen in anybody's life, that's always the point in all of these problems and discussions. That somehow, sometimes you attribute only to yourself a certain capacity, only to everyone else but you a certain other type of skills. It doesn't work that way. It, it isn't in the realm of ideas, at the very least. It doesn't happen that if you can do something everyone else can't, and if you can't do something everyone else can and you will never be capable of, there is nothing more beautiful. Instead of that's the point itself of talking about concepts. The development of ideas can happen in anybody's life. That's one of the worst problems, I guess, of IQ. Believing that you will never reach an understanding about things. You can be incredibly dumb in terms of measurements by the present society, as long as you start slowly but surely to create enough degrees of awareness about anything that you seem to aspire to, you will find out that there was indeed a possibility of discovery and change which in any way is meaningful. And that's what suffices enough the pursuit of any other thing. I never get why anybody finds it pleasurable to say and to discard all of those beautiful discoveries that can exist inside of life, I guess. It's like the negative aspect of the human mind seems to be a little bit more rewarding than the one which can show you happiness itself. It's like, let's say, like this, the strength when it comes to creating pleasure that something like hatred has is bigger than the strength brought to you by something like happiness. And sadly, even if it were to be like that, sadly, the reality itself is, on the other hand, it works pretty much like an addiction. That if you find it satisfactory to be angry about things and about the world, you will only keep on pursuing that. And even worse than that is being angry even damages your body in physical, real, measurable ways. Happiness has no downside, let's say. Meanwhile, if you only pursue anger, you can literally die out of anger. It doesn't help that not only it is something that seems to be so pursued by so many people, but also that it is something so incredibly harmful, which we talk so little about. It's weird, I guess. It's like I will classify it, as the present society has decided to give up almost on the necessity to constantly remind each other about the dangers of all of these different negative, harmful things, all of those. And it became a place in which we are self destructing all over the place, each one in their own way, simply because nobody wants to take the responsibility of telling others, yeah, you know what? It's bad. And I can obviously see the negatives side of that argument of wow, why are you even doing something like that? What are you trying to gain? It isn't about gaining anything. It isn't at all about gaining even one bit of anything. It's about letting other people not suffer. That's what matters in the end. Every other thing is okay. But being capable of not letting humans by themselves suffer is what truly helps in any meaningful way. But I don't know. It's so weird. The world in general is such a weird place, I guess. I mean, still, literally, this can be called one of the main examples. And even if it is weird, it is beautiful, so it doesn't really mean anything bad to say that it is weird. It doesn't really mean anything negative to say that it is strange or anything like that. But yeah, I don't know. I think I am really happy, and I think I am content with this already. So yeah, I don't know. I guess I don't have that much more to say. I simply wanted, at the very least, in any meaningful way, to show that we are still here. That we haven't so far died, and that the dream keeps on moving, I guess. Because despite any other problem existing, any other negative excuse being out there, probably used to justify my absence, despite that, here we are. Just with that, I am happy enough, man. Just with that, at the very least today, I am content enough. It's it's so much more than enough in that sense. I don't need that much more. At the very least, here we are today. We will see what happens next time. And I guess I want to do it. I am I am tired already. But let me do it. Let me do it because if not, I know I won't do it any day. I will probably forget about it incredibly soon. Let me finish this. Why is the pen so big? Nobody has any idea. I kind of already discussed this instead of the many things that I said, because it unavoidably is also part of nature, but instead of the concepts that we were talking about, there was this thing of the construction of knowledge and whatnot. Yeah, so, okay, instead of that, there was something very interesting. That was how knowledge gets created and gets shared inside of the mind and whatnot. Why is this important? Because when you have knowledge, you realize that it lets you explore the world. But why is this in any kind of way meaningful? Why having this awareness helps? I think it is kind of hard to picture something like this because it is all about ideas, about concepts. So I think something like this should suffice. Let me see here. I can explain it with words. I don't have images for this. I don't I don't have images for this explanation. I will. Okay, let's do this. I will draw you a tree. You will have to act like it means anything. Okay. There you go. You have a tree. There you go. What does this mean? Everything. Here. There you go. A tree. Why? This was referring to the idea of concepts, referring to the development of knowledge. Why did I want to go back to this? There was one particular bit which I left out, which I didn't mention at all, I am pretty sure. And that is something incredibly funny about knowledge is that many times throughout the experience of anybody, you will discover that the development of ideas itself can happen in any way, and it doesn't need to be tied particularly to any other thing, not because it is by nature all unrelated. Once again, ideas can only spring out of similar previous concepts. You are only always capable of creating even more closely related things out of what was previously properly understood before. Why does this matter now? Because it means that even the hardest of the concepts, as long as it is an idea which can be understood, can be integrated inside of that whole realm of previously well known concepts and can be adapted into yet another tool which you can have at your disposal. What does this even mean? Is that sometimes people likes to make it look like there are things which are impossible to do if you don't have enough intelligence. Once again, it isn't at all true that if you don't possess certain qualities, you will not have the pleasure of experiencing certain ideas and certain plays done with this. It only means basically that if you don't possess, let's say, okay, I think I can draw it like this. let's say it like this. If you have an idea over here, or I already drew it here. Okay, if you have an idea over here, which you want to obtain, which is outside of what you know, what you must do actively is try to develop as many other things as you can in order to slowly but surely reach that one particular idea. It's incredibly harmful to say, yeah, the ideas which we have in life are outside of our control, and there are some ideas which only certain people can experience. No, it doesn't help in any way to discard the possibilities of others of learning anything at all. When you say that it is impossible to reach certain levels of comprehension, it's trying to tie it into a proper example. Sorry if I only talk about philosophy. I have been studying mostly that for this whole year, so I can only give examples about something of that nature so far. But if you were to, for example, try to read somebody like Nietzsche and you found yourself struggling with somebody like him because his texts are incredibly complex, it doesn't mean that they are always going to be incredibly hard to decipher just because they are made by this singular unit of knowledge which is so distant out there. It means that you need a previous proper development in enough ways to reach this one certain interest which you have, and you need to actively pursue as many other things which are closely related to it in order to obtain the possibility of using what is encapsulated inside of that. If, particularly, for example, and I am talking about in this case Nietzsche because that's what happened to me, if you try to read somebody like him, you need to go how much time? I think it is like 3,000 years back in time and start reading from the oldest philosophers if you want to understand somebody like him. Not because it is homework, but rather because knowledge is built upon knowledge. There isn't any kind of idea at all which appears in the minds of the humans completely new, which is completely unconnected to any other thing. The mere descriptions and the mere words used to communicate throughout language, even if you believe that you are stating something particularly different inside of your own context, is still tied to the nature of words, which are by nature already limited and by nature already all explored, at the very least inside of its own particularities. This ends up meaning that you can, by properly doing the whole process of reaching that one piece of knowledge which you aspire to, get to understand things that by nature are hard, because it doesn't mean that they are not in any way hard. It just means that you properly gave yourself the possibility of understanding every other thing that was in the way between that and the concept itself which you are trying to absorb. And why would this in any kind of manner be useful or interesting to consider? Because it means that any single human being has the possibility of understanding. The only thing which varies are the capacities of properly absorbing information faster or slower. It doesn't in any manner mean that there are people who are going to get certain ideas and there are going to be people who are never going to reach certain degrees of understanding. It doesn't mean that. It just means that the development of knowledge is preceded by the proper construction of the previous blocks of knowledge which enable this present and future development of ideas. Basically, that's what I wanted to say before and what I don't want to leave without saying. Why is it, once again, why is it in any way useful to consider? Because it talks about the human nature itself. There isn't anybody who is restricted from learning. Learning itself is one of the easiest processes as long as you can properly observe how it can happen instead of anybody with enough proper development. Once again, that's everything. Now for real, thank you. I have nothing else to add. I have nothing else to add. Thanks. Have a nice day. That's truly what I wanted to say before leaving. That was literally the main idea which I had since so long ago, which I didn't properly talk about because I don't know. I guess I didn't fully take my time to properly visit and whatnot. So yeah, basically that. But anyways, we are done. We are completely done. At least for today, we're done. So yeah. Question: what are we going to do? Distractions. That's the response. I think so. not me particularly. I need to keep studying. I need to keep on studying. I have like, yeah, okay. Information which can properly indicate why I might still be absent for the next, I don't know, weeks. I think in like 1 or 2 months exams, so I have to study for all of that because they are the finals. So I need to fucking read like 20 books, I think, and I haven't even started with any of them. Besides, funnily enough, besides philosophy, I read every single thing that was instead of philosophy. I have nothing else to read in philosophy so far this year. But besides that, I have to like, how much? 50, 60, 70, 90 properly? Probably, yeah, between 90 and 100 hours of studying. And I don't want that, but it will happen anyways. So yeah. Still no consistency because I have to study. So thank you for all your patience. Anyways, can we raid somebody? Can I raid somebody? I have nothing else to truly add. So yeah, that's all that I wanted to say. Really, thank you. Yeah. Thank you, Caspian. I will try to study. It shouldn't be that hard. Once again, luckily enough, let's say like this: the development of knowledge ends up being quite an easy task. So you don't have to truly worry about if you are going to reach it. The problem is, when are you going to reach it? You need to have all of that previous development of ideas, and it takes time. So I will keep on using my time on that. I guess, but yeah, basically that. Anyways, too much information. I didn't ask for it. Shut up, Tupo. Yeah. Complete schizophrenia. So yeah, anyways, as always, what matters more? Thank you for being here. Thank you for watching. Thank you for everything. It has been a wonderful day. I have nothing else to say. Have a nice day. Have a nice life. Be happy. Do something. If you're here, still, what matters the most? Do something meaningful. Please, for the love of God. Ah. Yeah. Basically, that's me. That's me, Franzen. Sadly. But anyways, goodbye, people. Have a nice one. Thanks for everything. Remember to be happy. Remember to hydrate, to properly rest, to do exercise, to do whatever is needed. It is the end of today for us. Nothing else to truly say. Nothing else to truly think about. Go and entertain yourself. Distract yourself from the pain of this world with somebody who is wonderful. Go and watch Scab. He's playing Project Zomboid. Turn off your mind and watch that instead. Don't think about the problems of the world unless you have the responses for them and you know how to solve them. But that is a different matter. Goodbye.